Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Williams, and I'm here today with my friend and former client, Erin Dysart. Erin recently came to me with great news that she had successfully transitioned into a new career. And Erin, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and where you were when you first came to me for coaching?
Okay, sure. Let's see where I was when I first came to you. I guess that was about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was living overseas and preparing for returning to work after a parenting break of 5 years. And I was planning to return to work. It was about 5 or so months after we first spoke that I would even be able to go back to work. And my previous work had been in international education, managing scholarship programs. But as I was returning to the US, returning to Portland, and returning to work, I decided that I wanted to shift toward grant making and philanthropy. So
Mm-hmm.
some of the sort of same skills, but in a different industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. And we were Skyping and you were in Taiwan and you were going to move to
Yeah.
Portland and just kind of start everything over.
Yes, yes. Returning to Portland, I had lived there previously for 8 years, so I had a network, but I wasn't able to physically be there and have the coffee meetings and have the conversations and stuff. So, yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to get going from afar on that much transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember kind of giving you a lay of the land and saying, hey, I think Twitter might be a really great way to start building a network here, at least tapping into what's going on.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so when you came to me and said, hey, Jess, I got this great new job, and I just want to let you know that actually Twitter was really influential in helping me get
Yeah,
that job. I was really excited. So,
yeah.
as you know, I tell this to all of my clients. I teach this a lot. But oftentimes people are a little afraid of Twitter. It's a little
Hmm.
overwhelming.
Hmm.
And I remember you kind of being like, I don't know, I kind of have a Twitter.
Yeah, yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about kind of how you started using Twitter and how it was effective for you in this job search?
Sure. Well, when I first got started, based on your advice, thank you so much. I was using it primarily as a learning tool because
Mm-hmm.
again, I was trying to shift industries, and I had a little bit of a sense of what was happening in philanthropy and grant making, but I had so much to learn. So I sort of started with finding industry associations, thought leaders, and sort of following a few organizations and people at first, find out what they're talking about, what conversations are happening, what are the key issues, trends. Because I know something else that you advised me was to really start to learn what's the vocabulary in that industry, how do people talk about the work that they do, and that was something I was able to absorb pretty quickly from Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So finding those thought leaders and then branching out from there, following who they follow, and just uh, led me to so many resources online that I just probably wouldn't have found otherwise. Because I learned pretty quickly that it wasn't so much the actual tweet itself, the 140 characters that really taught me a lot, but everybody was linking to their really weighty, meaty content. So all these industry associations were linking to their reports, their conference proceedings, their videos online even that they had. I found a lot of links to free training webinars that I could attend. So I was getting some again from grant making specific sort of industry knowledge, and then other things that were like about nonprofit communication. And so it was just a wealth of resources that I could tap into that way.
Oh, cool. Okay, so let's talk about the webinars because,
Mhm.
um, I tell clients a lot, hey, there are organizations that will have, trainings and
Mhm.
seminars and brown bag lunches that you can go to and you can start
Mhm.
learning about what they're doing and connecting with people at that
Yep.
organization. So you actually found that was true.
Oh yeah, tons. And again, that was so valuable to me because I couldn't, at the time I wasn't even in the States, so I couldn't sit in a chair and be in these meetings. So yeah, I found tons of, again, a lot of so my experience was that like industry associations that were publishing a report, then they would kind of do a public campaign around that, including a webinar. And actually, then there were a lot that I was attending live while it was happening, and then plenty that they had posted, previously recorded from previous reports. So I was able to watch those at any hour of the day. So yeah, a lot about their current research reports that they're publishing.
Cool. So in that way, you were learning a lot about the industry and that organization and kind of their
Yes.
belief systems within the space.
Hmm. Hmm. And again, the sort of the the vocabulary, how people in that industry are talking and moving and
Mm.
connecting.
Okay, very cool. And how was that experience when you first kind of started doing that on Twitter? What did that feel like for you?
Well, I think we've probably all heard the sort of fire hose metaphor for what Twitter can feel like. It's just like, wow, it's this huge, it's just this whole world of content. And at first it was a little intimidating. But again, I found if it just picked a couple of thought leaders to start following at first, then it was, um, you're only following who you choose to follow. So
Hmm.
that thins it down pretty quickly. So I don't know. I guess it was pretty easy to learn the norms and figure out who I wanted to follow. And I did start using lists to organize to keep myself a little bit organized on Twitter.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads me to two other questions. One, how did you find the people, the thought leaders? Where were they hanging out and you were able to like say, I want to follow that person?
Well, so in my case, it's not too hard to, try a few words in Google to find the industry associations. And then really once I found one, so in my case, like the Center for Effective Philanthropy, for example, and they have a pretty robust Twitter presence, go in to see who's following them and importantly, who are they following?
Mm.
Follow all of them or follow the ones that seem to be larger organizations. And it's, you pretty quickly notice patterns of important organizations that are either tweeting each other or seem to appear on everybody's lists or something like that. So it was, even if you're starting from complete scratch, you can probably string together a few words in Google to figure out who's a big organization to follow. But
Okay.
I'm sure, most people I'm sure can identify a couple of organizations to start with and then whoever they're following.
And from there, it's just like a web that like branches
Yeah, it's
out.
everywhere. Yeah, it's some of the people who work at those organizations then have their own presence and who the other people that they're following. It's just
Mm.
like it fans out very quickly. Yeah.
Great. And then my second question was you talk about list and how you
Mhm.
use that. So can you expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. Well, I found I was so of course I was trying to get the lay of the industry, but I also wanted to look at Portland specifically. So I started as soon as I would find an organization that was on Twitter, I wanted to were they sort of a national association? Okay, were they Portland? They're Portland in this nonprofit category that I'm interested, or they're Portland in this grant making category that I'm interested in, or that's also industry news sources, so not just associations, but like a philanthropy digest, those sorts of things. So I organized them into lists, and that way, if I wanted to just look at what's happening nationally, I could sort of click on my own list and look at all of that information. Or if I wanted to just quickly scan what's happening with Portland people, I could do that. Does
Hmm.
that? Did you want
That
to say more about that?
no, that totally makes sense. Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense. So you were able to kind of organize content so you weren't overwhelmed when you went on Twitter. You could just look at certain people's feeds based on your list
Right.
that you had built.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And were hashtags helpful to you at all as you were trying to?
Yeah, yeah, that's again when that's sort of part of the learning the vocabulary, if you will, of what's happening. You can also see the hashtags that seem to be significant or important.
Mm-hmm.
So I could, I guess, just searching a hashtag,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
see again who else is talking about hashtag nonprofits.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then kind of my last question is, you mentioned how you were following thought leaders
Hmm.
and and when we had coffee a
Hmm.
few
Yeah.
days ago, you said that you were engaging. So you were
Yes.
retweeting and
Uh-huh.
favoriting
Yeah.
and kind of your goal around doing that and how what the outcome was for you.
Sure. Well, when I started using Twitter, I was using it more like as an educational tool. But then because I wasn't doing a lot of tweeting myself. I was sort of listening and absorbing for a while. But then so I never had a goal of sort of increasing my audience, like having a lot of followers myself. But I did want to be able to use Twitter again because I was transitioning industries to sort of create this record of my own. Thoughts around things that are happening in that industry because that wasn't otherwise reflected on my resume or anything. All this knowledge that I've been building up, there was no place to show it really except on Twitter. So I wanted to have some sort of intelligent, relevant tweets myself. So I set a goal for myself, not big, just to have like one meaningful tweet a day, not just a retweet of somebody else, but like I read this article, I digested it, and here's my key thought from it. sort of meaningful tweets. Again, just to build up a record of engaging with the issues, I guess, of the in the industry. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
So that was part of that. I guess that was my goal with what I was doing in terms of tweeting for my tweeting, and then also, of course, organizations that I was interested in as target organizations in Portland that could potentially be employers. Certainly, I was following them very closely, liking their content. Right, it was favorited when I started. Now it's like they switched from the star to the heart during that time.
They did, yeah.
So now liking the content and retweeting what was seemed appropriate. Also did a little bit of tweeting directly at some organizations to say like, oh, this thing that's happening nationally, I noticed it really reminds me of this thing you're doing locally. And then also I did a couple times of tweeting directly at the organization like, oh, hey, I found this resource that might be useful to you or people in your in your network. So trying to be sort of generous and adding value, I guess, in that way.
That's great. And did they ever respond? Did you ever get like?
Oh, sure. Yeah. There was had a lot of interactions with the target organization where I have ended up and tweeting things at them, retweeting their content, them retweeting the things that I said about them. So and that had been going on for 4 or 6 months or so by the time I even applied for a job there. So I knew going in that at least to somebody in the organization, my name would be recognizable because, we had all this interaction. And then as it turned out, when I did have an interview, as I was leaving the office, I just so happened to bump into the social media person who I recognized from pictures and from online profiles. And so introduced myself and we chatted and ended up hooking up on LinkedIn and started making coffee plans and stuff. So beside all the interaction that I was doing online, just it really having that built up positioned me well to be able to capitalize on opportunities that later presented themselves.
Right. Like in-person opportunities.
Yeah,
right?
like in person or, after the interview, I had, when I sent my thank you note, I had this really relevant, important article I felt like I could share that sort of built on the conversation we had during the interview, but I sort of had that teed up just because, I found that through Twitter and just part of my education via Twitter.
That's so great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk about Twitter because I know can be overwhelming for people, and it really made me happy to hear that it was a successful tool helping you kind of get this new job. I mean, really.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for the advice. Happy to spend time.
Yeah. If you've enjoyed this video, I invite you to check out my website at jessicajconsulting.com, where I offer career and leadership coaching for women who want to raise their value in the marketplace to achieve more money, success, and joy in their careers.